Hey there, everybody. Welcome to our next installment of Bootstrap here. So what we're going to talk about today a little bit is the Jumbotron, and I will probably talk a little bit about buttons at the end as well. So in your Get Bootstrap, if you go into the documentation and go to components, you can see some examples of what the Jumbotron is going to look like. And what it is just basically something that you use usually at the top of the page is something of a focal point. And there's a couple of different options that you can use. So let's go ahead and get started with the code. If you go to the Getting Started tab up top here on the left, go ahead and get your starter template copied. And let's go ahead and start writing some code in Notepad. I'm going to click back over here onto the components and into the Jumbotron. And that way we're here when we need to be. So I've already done all the skeleton, everything, all the starter template in here. I've already also adjusted my code with the tab keys to take out their version. And I've changed the title to just Bootstrap, and we'll call it Jumbotron. So go ahead, and now it's time to go into the body. So there's multiple different ways that we can go, but first let's go ahead and divide our page. So we'll have the header section, the nav section. Then we're going to have the spot where our Jumbotron is going to go. Usually it will go directly underneath the navigation. That's probably the best spot to do that. So we'll go ahead here then, and being difficult today, all right, we'll put our div with a class of container for our main body content. And then we'll put our footer as well. And I'm leaving these blank today. They don't really matter. I just want you to be familiar with the process of how this works. So our Jumbotron is going to go here. The start for this is always, with Bootstrap, usually anyways, a div tag. So for this div, we're going to use a class of Jumbotron. And even just that, if you go ahead save and go ahead and open it in your default viewer, you can see that the Jumbotron is there. It's this light gray portion at the top of the screen. So that's the startings of our Jumbotron. Now, one of the things that you can do, so as we want to align our content here. Inside of Jumbotron, we can actually put this div with a class of container. So that way when we go and we put our stuff in, like we'll put H1. So we'll just say hello. And this, we'll just do display 3 as a Bootstrap class there. So let's go ahead and go take a look real quick at what this does. So we have our hello inside of our Jumbotron, and then you notice how far over it is. So the reason for the container is that if you're go ahead and then you're doing stuff in here. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Okay. By the way, there's two modes you can type in, insert or delete mode. If you hit that insert key, generally that's what happens. You have an issue like I did. Anyways, so if you go back here and you notice that when you put page content in, everything now lines up down the page. And that's generally what I'm looking for, is I don't want hello to be over on this side and page content to be there. This way, if you use container, it all lines up, which is indeed the purpose of container. So you can put other things in here if you want to. whatever you want to. But that's our container. We don't need to really worry. We could put that class of lead on there. We don't need to because everything that you put in there goes into container. So we generally don't want gray as our option. So if you want to change the background color of this, you can always do, I don't know if that's the one or not. Forget. Nope, it's not the one. Info will go. So if you change, you can always add those classes on, and you can change the background color of the Jumbotron, or you can go the other direction, and you can go and you can add, you have to delete that one first, the style tag. We'll go with a nice slate blue. You can always go and you can add color in that way with your inline style tags, and that's the only way you can do this. You can't really do CSS up on the top of the page for this because one of the downsides of the Bootstrap is that it will be a Boolean overwrite a lot of the CSS you write there. So it has to all be in line so we can bully the Bootstrap. Now, one other thing you can do if you choose is that we can put a background image in there. Sometimes this works out kind of funky, but as it goes, we'll give it a shot here. So I'm just going to pick this little pink nebula thing, and I'll go and I'll just copy the image address. And what I can do is then, instead of background color, we can go background image. And then we can add the URL, which will then be the thing that we just copied. So with that, what we have is that pink thing. Now, you see that there's an inherent problem with this, is that the images almost never go in how you want them to go. And you can do a couple of things like the background size. And you can just say that we want to cover that particular thing, and then it'll go and it'll take it away, so that it'll just cover. But then it just blows it up all giant and stuff, and that's not necessarily a good look either. So this would be a spot where you really want to do some good Photoshop to make it so you have images that will work. But again, that is one of the options you have. One of the other options you have is we have this class of container. We can actually take this class of container. Let's put a second Jumbotron on here. So we have our container here for our main page content. You could very well, oops, that's wrong. Put your class of Jumbotron down in here. And then we'll just reuse some of the text that we have here. And if you put the Jumbotron inside of the container, then you go and you have something that's a little bit more contained, especially for this, which is a larger screen size, where it's not going to touch the edge of the screen. It's going to just be in line with our text right here. So those are different options that you have with the Jumbotron. Let's go ahead and we'll add one more thing on there, and we're going to add a button. So if you go and you click back to your Bootstrap here, button is another thing that is a great option. So you have two different ways that you can add buttons. One, you have an actual button tag, and that is fine, but the way you're probably going to do it more than not is you're going to actually use the A tag. So if we go here, back to our code, and underneath of our paragraph here, what we'll do is we'll just add our button right there. So if you put your A tag, and we'll just add a class of BTN, and let's see. And BTN is the base class that you need to actually go and make a button. Now, you see that there's one other thing that you need, and that's something to color it. So BTN-primary is indeed a blue sort of button. So button turns our link into a button, BTN-primary. Make sure that that is indeed a blue button. So let's go ahead and take a quick look. And we have our basic button on there. So if we go back, we take a look, there's definitely some other things that we probably should have on there actually. We need the href and the role of button that we can go and we can put on. So then our button will actually look as it should, like that. So other things you can do. In your classes here, we could always do button-info and change the color of our button to be that. Additionally, we could add a class, btn- I think it's LG. Let's go take a look real quick. Yeah, and that makes it a little bit larger size. Or you could add a different class, btn-block, that turns your button from just that small regular sized button into something that'll stretch all the way across the screen. Now with your buttons you can go and you can again add more style to them. So we can say that we want, we'll say 4VH for the padding, and then we'll want to say a width of 50% and a margin auto. And what we should then be able to do is make our button much larger. 4 is it's just way too much, sorry. But it's going to then stretch a little bit more. Let's go change that, it bothers me. So 4VH is obviously quite a bit too much. Let's go maybe more like 2. And we what we did is we resized our button. We made it so it's actually a block element and it's centered on the page and it's half of the page. And we did that with our actual CSS in line here. And that's the way that you would go ahead and you could change that. Most likely when you do buttons, it's going to be with this A tag. You can do the other button tag as well. All of these things are things that you can check out on the Get Bootstrap website. Always check out all the options you have there. And then we will go ahead and we will continue with our next installment coming up very shortly.